Hey guys, how's it going? Today we've got another review on the channel. I'm going to be reviewing this 1984 Oldsmobile Delta 88. So I know this term gets used a lot, but I mean this car is literally a boat. It's fat, it's big, it's slow. I mean, but you probably feel really cool driving it. And I mean, you're in an Oldsmobile, so you're basically guaranteed to pull at least 3 to 5 females a day. Yeah, no, I mean, most people around my age don't even know what the hell an Oldsmobile is because they went out of business, I think, in the late 90s or early 2000s. I don't know, but all I know is that this car is classic. It actually looks pretty good in my opinion, and it is pretty unique because, like I said, Oldsmobile does not actually make cars anymore. So that being said, ladies might not really care about your car, but fellow car guys will probably at least take a second glance, which is, well, I mean, that kind of sounds strange now that I'm saying it, but basically, bottom line, you're going to attract more guys with this car than girls. So hey, if that's your preference, then go for it. All right, so now I'm actually going to be showing this car some love. So this is basically an 8th generation Oldsmobile Delta 88. This particular body style was actually referred to as a B body. And also the 8th generation of these cars lasted from 1977 to 1985. So this is an 84, so it's basically right towards the end of the 8th generation of this car. So yeah, like I said before, this car is definitely longer, wider, and heavier than most modern cars at least. I mean, this car actually has a length of 218 inches, a width of 76 inches, a height of 56 inches, and a ridiculous curb weight of 3,708 pounds. So yeah, this car is a thick boy for sure. So moving on to the actual wheels. Now this car actually sits on the stock original setup, which honestly I think is really cool considering that this car is from 1984 and the wheels are in actually really considerably good condition for being almost 40 years old now. Something else that I actually think is really cool for this car. So as you can see here, it's kind of got these like chrome wind deflectors. Now most cars actually, you can buy like, WeatherTech wind deflectors or stuff like that you'll see on most, modern cars. But I actually think it's pretty ingenious that Oldsmobile actually thought of this, back in the 80s. I'm sure there's cars before this one that had it on there, but I just think it's really cool. And as you can see, it's on basically, all 4 windows of this car. So underneath the hood of this thing, this car actually has a naturally aspirated 5-liter V8. Now, it's actually not the same as the 302s that are traditionally found in Mustang. Yes, I know this is an Oldsmobile, so it's GM, so obviously it's going to be different. But yeah, this is actually a 307. Now, I just found that kind of interesting because a lot of times, back in the 80s and the 70s, a lot of, at least American car companies did that, where they pretty much just had slightly bigger engines so that they can, market to the public as, I guess, a more desirable engine. I don't know. But that's, something that something that's pretty interesting that they actually did back then. Now, what I found kind of crazy is that this engine actually only produces 140 horsepower and 240 foot-pounds of torque. So I know those numbers are pretty low, but they might not seem too bad at first. I mean, 240 foot-pounds of torque, like that's pretty decent, but then you remember the 3,700 pounds of curb weight that this thing has. And yeah, that kind of explains why it's pretty slow. So yeah, needless to say, this car really doesn't accelerate fast at all. I mean, from the factory, like the factory projected 0 to 60 time, well, it's an absolutely blistering 12.6 second 0 to 60. Now, if you can't tell, that was sarcastic. Now, the power this engine produces actually transfers through a 4-speed automatic, just General Motors transmission, which has a ungoverned top speed of only 107 miles per hour. Now, this car actually has a governor on it, so I believe it can go 90 or 95 at most. I don't really know. The owner doesn't really know as well, but in my research, I did find out that this car did come from the factory with a governor, even though it only had, the top speed of, 107 miles per hour. So believe it or not, this car actually wasn't really considered too slow when it first came out. Now, I know that might seem strange, but honestly, like looking back on it, that's why I really like to, review or at least just drive like older cars. because it really does put a perspective on how far technology has come, especially, you know, in the automotive world. I mean, now we're practically just used to at least 300 you know, brake horsepower from anything, any vehicle really, whether it's an SUV, a truck, a car, whatever. Like, that's kind of like the standard, you know, now. And looking back at it, this thing like weighs a lot, and it had pretty much half of like what those numbers had, and it was a V8. So yeah, I mean, the technology, it's definitely come a long way. But yeah, I just found that pretty interesting because, you know, doing some research on this thing from factory back in 1984, like, this thing was really considered a great car. So one thing that was considered really great about this car was its luxury and its, you know, quote unquote modern day conveniences of the time. So as we can see here, it's basically in the back seat, it's just one big giant couch. It's this really plush, like, felt. I mean, almost, I don't know what type of material, but and it's basically got kind of like the same seats in the front, except the front's actually only considered a two-seater because it just has the two seat belts. And in the back, there's actually, it's a three-seater. And also what I found really cool is that each individual window has, they're electric windows. Like, it's not power windows. And in the front, actually, there's the two front seats are actually motorized seats as well. So this thing was really considered, I don't want to say ahead of its time, because this technology was already out when this car came out, but it was really considered a all-American, you know, luxury vehicle, really. Now, this owner actually wired in two pretty big 12-inch sundown subwoofers in the back here, and I'm actually going to take you guys back to the front, like to the driver's seat, because what he did with the wiring, I think, is actually really cool. So yeah, what this owner did was actually he kept like the original radio setup, and under here there was actually an ashtray, and he basically just took out the ashtray and wired in the subwoofers to a modern radio. But it's very hidden. It's really like stealthy, because like if you're just looking up here, like, you can't really see it, but it's kind of like all the way underneath the, you know, original dashboard, which I really like how he kept this all, you know, super clean and pretty much super original, really. All right, guys, so now I'm actually driving this thing, and I must say, even though I was ripping on it before for, like, you know, not accelerating fast or whatever, this thing is really fun to drive. Now, obviously, there's a lot of slack in the steering wheel. You know, this is an older car, but I mean, it still feels super comfortable. I mean, I know I mentioned the seats before, but they feel really good driving on. Like, it's really not uncomfortable at all. Now, yes, you're kind of moving around. The suspension's very loose. This thing it's got no speed, no performance, but the handling is actually pretty smooth because how the suspension is set up. It's very floaty. Like, I just went over some bumps, and I'm sure the camera shook, but I mean, this car is not really stiff or rigid at all, which, again, if you're building a car, if you got a project car, you want everything super stiff. But as far as comfort's concerned, like, this thing is really comfortable. Now, I'm not gonna blast the radio or anything because that would completely ruin the video quality, but my friend he was driving me in it before, he had the subwoofers going, and like the entire, like, the frame of the car was shaking. It was crazy. But yeah, you feel pretty cool driving this thing. Now, again, it's not like a 6'4" Impala or, like, you know, some crazy, like, old school lowrider, but it's got the same kind of feeling as those cars. It's super slow. It does look good, in my opinion. I know some people might not like this kind of like boxy body style, but I think it looks pretty cool. It feels really good. Everything mechanically feels tight about it. The engine sounds healthy. The transmission, surprisingly, it goes into gears like really smooth. Now, like I said before, this is a 4-speed automatic. It's actually got the column shifter on it. But yeah, once you just put it in drive and like let it do its thing, it goes into gears really smooth. And yeah, I just floored it, and it went to it went from like 30 to 40 in like 2 seconds. So it's definitely really slow, but again, when you're driving this thing, you don't care about speed. Now, the owner of this car actually got this with just over 90,000 miles on it, and he's had it for like 3 months now, and he's already put 7,000 miles on it. Like, he's been driving it a lot. He's been going on longer trips as well as just, you know, around town. But it feels really, really good, and it's just like the radio that he put in it works fantastic with the speakers in the back, and it's just really cool to drive. It does have these stock wheels on it, so you do really want to be careful around bumps, because you don't want to dent the rims or anything. But besides that, it's overall just a pretty good car. There's nothing that I can complain about it. Now, the brakes on this thing actually work really good. In my research, I didn't find out if they were disc brakes or drum brakes. They're probably, knowing the year of this car, they're probably drum on the back and, you know, disc brakes up front. If not, they're probably just drum all the way around. But yeah, it brakes good. It handles really well. I'm going over potholes right now. Not too big, but I'm going over bumps right now, and it handles them really good. Again, it's floaty. You're not going to take corners at a very high speed with this thing, but that being said, it does just handle really good. So one thing actually pretty interesting about this car, and I actually just realized it while I was driving it, and it doesn't have a tach. It doesn't have a tachometer, so you kind of just have to, you know where you're at. I mean, again, you don't have to shift gears, it's an automatic, but I did find that kind of interesting. It kind of has the old school, you know, speedometer that just goes like the horizontal speedometer. But yeah, I mean, I found that kind of odd. All right, so that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. I hope it was informative to anyone who is looking specifically at this car, and I hope it, you know, helped you guys out a lot. But definitely make sure to like the video, make sure to subscribe, make sure to share my profile with your friends if you like my videos. I'm gonna do a lot more car reviews in the future, as well as DIY videos and car show vlogs. So that being said, thank you guys for watching till the end of this video. Thank you guys for all the support. Until the next one, see ya.